Pictures up, quiet please.
Parker? What's on your mind?
I've thought about this all night. Whether what I'm about to do is the right thing or not.
Let me go in and talk to him alone, Dr. Mallory.
I did so only because he was working along lines contrary to the good of mankind.
Well, Rangers, looks as though Agents McKenzie and Hopkins are going to have to get to that hacienda and get there mighty fast.
You crushed all opposition and made me the most powerful man in the world.
Welcome to Good Movie Hunting, the podcast where your hosts, Sequoia and Miss Cara, talk about celebrities, movies, the best, the worst, and our favorites that are out there. Every week we pick a new actor or actress that we want to discuss, and yeah, that's pretty much the template for our show. Am I missing anything?
That's about right. Now we're starting our second episode, so that template is subject to change.
Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah, we'll see.
Welcome to the ride. Thank you for being here for our second episode, everybody.
Thank you for this, joining us on this roller coaster that is called life.
Yes.
All right. So up top, we want to talk about a couple things. In our first episode, we talked about Brad Pitt. Hopefully, as everybody knows, I would hope that you're not starting off on the second episode because that's just weird. Like, if a podcast has only 2 episodes out and you start on the second, not the first, I don't know. I'm going to judge you a little bit.
Oh, that's definitely a thing I would do.
Oh,
I start at the most recent.
Then I'm judging you a little bit. So just have that knowledge. Okay. All right. So up top, we want to mention that, we talked about Brad Pitt in this first episode. And then, of course, I think it was like a week late. I mean, not even a week, like a couple days later, we see that there's an announcement that Brad Pitt is going to be on the GQ cover for, I think it's the August edition.
Yeah.
Which is like crazy, and the timing and everything is just bonkers,
Well, and, Danny sends it in our group chat.
And we thought it was fake.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's not real.
And we're like, there's no way. And also, if you've seen the cover, like, it's a little jarring.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good word.
A lot of comments were talking about how it was like in the old days you would take a picture of a dead body in the casket.
No. That is what it looks like.
It's exactly what it looks like. Yeah, he looks like he's embalmed. I mean,
like his eyes, and
we're not going to disrespect Brad Pitt after all the love we gave him last week. This is not disrespect towards him, but GQ, baby, what you doing out there?
I know, that was like a rough picture.
It was not what anybody was expecting to
People
see.
were like commenting and saying like, Brad, please blink twice if you're in trouble. Like, are you being held captive? What's going on?
Yeah, that was pretty extreme.
I just love, the timing of that.
Yeah.
So we did that. And then we also wanted to mention as well that we wanted to cover best, worst, and our favorites. But because it was our first episode, we had just terrible time management, and we did not get to cover the favorite movie.
Well, we covered it. It exists somewhere out there, but it has...
No, they don't need to know that. That's okay. Patreon only.
Sorry,
Danny. So I just wanted to give an honorable mention to the movie Legends of the Fall, which is my favorite Brad Pitt movie. And maybe one day we'll be able to do like a comeback, and
I would love to watch that again. Thank you.
Yeah. Get to mention
Good
that.
movie, but bad for the heart.
Yeah, it's a rough one. It gets you right in the feels. All right, so we have that, and then of course, I'm sure as you've all seen and heard with your beautiful little ears, we want to shout out our graphic designer, Alicia West, who did our podcast cover art. Her on Twitter is at Alicia West 110, and that's Alicia ALISHIA West WEST 110 on Twitter.
Hey, Alicia, thank you.
Hey, it turned out perfect. I couldn't
really
be happier.
did, yeah.
And then we want to shout out our sound engineer and my good friend Dave Suplee, who did our podcast intro. He's at and we were talking about this before, his @ gives me like a stroke every time I look at it. It's @ everyone corrected me. They think it's Ravid. In my head, I'm saying Ravid. But either way, it's Ravid.
Yeah.
On Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. We love it.
It's awesome. And then we wanted to drop our socials as well. We have a Facebook page at Good Movie Hunting or at GMH Podcast, Twitter at GMH Pod, Instagram at GMH Podcast. We have an email, and it is goodmoviehuntingpod@gmail.com. And we also have a YouTube channel. We do not have like actual visuals up yet. That's forthcoming, but we do have like the audio, for people who do like to listen to their podcasts on YouTube. And it's just Good Movie Hunting Podcast on YouTube.
Yeah.
We just wanted to say thank you for all of the suggestions for future episodes so far. And if you do have any more suggestions for the podcast, you can reach out to us on any of the before mentioned socials. We are very surprised and humbled at all the love and support on our first episode. It's been pretty incredible to see all of the listeners that we're gaining and the far-reaching, like the international listeners that it's showing as well.
Cool to see.
Has been so cool. At first, I was just like, it was all saying United States, and I'm like, okay, that tracks. We're in the U.S. And then it was like, oh, Poland, UK, and I'm like, what?
Honestly, my expectation was that like your family would listen to us, and that would be it. So it's lovely. It's so lovely.
You're like, oh my gosh, you have Polish family?
Yeah. Wow.
Like, well, no, but thank you again, everyone, and we really appreciate all the support that we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening, and we hope to continue to deliver the content that you're looking for. And now I'll hand things over to Cara to introduce our topic for today.
Okay, perfect. So today we get to cover Sandra Bullock. This week was my choice. Love this person. Very excited that I got to learn some more about her, watch a couple new movies that I've not seen before. Some quick facts about Sandra Bullock. That is her birth name, Sandra Annette Bullock. Born July 26th, 1964.
No way!
Yep.
She's a July baby.
She is a July baby.
Which means she's a Leo.
I'm glad you knew that because I forgot to look it up, even though I know you're a Leo.
Yeah. Yay. Okay.
Yeah. Love a good Leo. That's
Solidarity.
Sequoia over there. We were talking about that today. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the birth year, she's my mother's age. Not saying that my mother's old, just saying that. Wow,
Sandra, she could be your mother.
Yeah,
she can be all of our collective.
A collective mother. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
The world would be a better place if Sandra Bullock was all of our mother.
Danny's shaking his head no.
No?
I think it's the. Yeah, I was about to say it's definitely the hot factor. Like you look at her and maybe sometimes you
don't want to be related. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, she can be a mom, but maybe, a different kind of mom, if you know what I'm saying.
Mommy?
Ooh.
Anyway, born in Arlington, Virginia. So this was a very cool thing about Sandra Bullock that I never knew. So her mother, although she did die at a young age of 58, was an opera singer and a voice teacher from Germany.
What?
Okay, and then her father was an Army employee, also a part-time voice coach.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's how the two met then.
Well,
if
it's
not,
nothing to do with the vote. So it's because he was stationed in Europe and then, with the Army. And then when he was stationed in Germany, I guess is when he met her mother. And then they definitely bonded over the vocal stuff, but I don't think that's how they met.
Wow.
It could be. It could be. I didn't see the part.
How serendipitous.
Right. Yeah, it's just beautiful. They got married in Germany. She actually grew up in Germany and Austria.
No way.
Yes, so she was raised speaking German. She has dual citizenship in Germany. How cool is that?
I never would have guessed.
I know.
Like, not in a million years.
I know. And then get this, she studied ballet and vocal arts. She did a lot with theater production. And she actually, sang sometimes like in minor roles for her mother's productions, and I thought that was just wow, that this woman can do all the things that we already know that she can do, but she apparently comes from like musical prodigy as well.
Yeah,
cool.
I feel like, I mean, that song comes to mind, the anything you can do, I can do better.
Yeah, she, like that sounded nice.
No,
good job, Sequoia.
We just came from a Halsey concert. My vocal cords are trashed, so don't even.
Yeah. But yeah, I just really cool about the dual citizenship, about her growing up in Germany and Austria, and again about her having the ballet, the vocal arts, theater production, which you can see how that would transpire going from there to acting in her career. So yeah, as a young adult, she moved to Manhattan because she knew that's where, she had a chance of being found. She worked as this girl, she would grind. She was a bartender, cocktail waitress, coat checker while auditioning for small roles. So she definitely worked herself to where she is. It wasn't handed to her.
Yeah. She's got the hustle.
Yeah, respect that hustle for sure. Now, even after becoming famous, she did open, and this part is pretty cool for us, she opened a bistro in 2006. It's on 6th Street in Austin, Texas. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I was just there.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So it's no longer, from what I can tell, no longer still there. I think it closed in 2015. But very cool. I think, from what I understand, her time with Jesse James kind of brought her to Texas, which I did not know that part.
I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot about that until you brought it up. I was like, shit, like her and Jesse James.
I know, it was such a big part of her life. And I really didn't know much about it, or to be honest, don't know much about Jesse James. But they did get
of it.
Yeah,
like, I don't know too much.
Yeah, well, the basics of it is they got married in 2005. But there was a big scandal 2010 around the time of her doing The Blind Side came out about him cheating on her.
I think that's Danny's favorite. That's why he's doing
the Blind Side.
Shake.
So good. Yes, so good. But around that time when they were kind of doing their promotions for it, came out that he had been cheating on her. He made a public apology. But that was a pretty tumultuous ending for them. She went through with her plans to adopt even after the divorce. So she adopted as a single parent, and then adopted again in 2015. Really cool of her.
That's awesome.
Yes. A couple other notable personal life dating moments. There was Ryan Gosling. Not a ton of information on their time together. It was brief. But did you know that she dated Matthew McConaughey? Because I did not.
Bro.
Power
fucking couple.
I know.
I'm sorry.
And
I'm saying it now. I want them to be my new parents.
But,
sorry, Mom and Dad. That's amazing.
Can you imagine? Well, and the really cool thing is they are still friends. They have said, like, we will always be there for each other. It doesn't matter what else is happening in our lives or who we're with. We love each other in a very significant way, and we're always going to be there for each other. And when they were together, they kept it pretty hush-hush. Like, there wasn't anything public, which is a huge deal with, how our celebrities have basically no right to privacy, that they were able to pull that off.
Yeah.
But it was around the time of, they did A Time to Kill together. And it did last for 2 years, so that's pretty significant. But yeah, the fact that they're still close friends and how this friendship established is very cool. And then now she's with Brian Randall since 2015. He's a photographer and model. Didn't find a whole lot on him. He's a cutie. They're a cute couple. And then another notable thing that I noticed from her personal life is she's had some rough times with stalking. Pretty bad. And then, of course, I have to mention our last episode. We talked about Brad Pitt and his stalker, and we're only one episode in, and I already have to apologize because of misspeaking or making light of something. But Brad Pitt was stalked, and I said, not to condone her behavior, but can you blame her? Well, yes, we can blame her. That was traumatizing. That was scary for him. Not something to be belittled. And so apologies to him. I'm sure that was very scary for him, and it was a real thing that he went through. And as I was reading through what Sandra Bullock went through, and how terrifying that must have been for her, I was like, oh, I'm kind of having like one of those moments where it's just not cute to make light of someone's trauma. So hers was pretty scary. There's a whole section in researching her. There's multiple times But the most traumatic of them, she had to lock herself into a room and call 911. The SWAT team came. It was a whole ordeal. I think the stalker ended up killing himself, possibly. It ended in death.
God.
It was a very big deal. Oh. Yeah, can you imagine?
No, I can't.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely see what you're saying now, that when you were reading that, it made you instantly regret the Brad Pitt comment. I understand.
Yeah. So just a little humble moment there, but felt like I needed to mention that feeling that I had. In public image, I think that we all have seen enough of her in every forum of information for celebrities to know she's known as, many times called America's sweetheart. 1996 and 1999, she was deemed the most beautiful the most beautiful people in the world in the magazine. I mean, she is. Yes. Number 58 on Empire magazine's top 100 movie stars of all time.
Ooh,
that's some big stuff.
That is quite an honor.
Yes. 2010, she was Woman of the Year in People's Magazine, and then People's Magazine 2015, Most Beautiful Woman. So she's gotten some love.
A lot of
well
high
deserved.
praise.
Yes. Love her philanthropy. She's donated.
Sorry, there's a cat trying to break in right now.
She's donated $1 million to American Red Cross at least 5 times that we know of.
Ooh,
some good stuff. Some hurricane relief. I mean, many different times where she's donated at least $1 million.
Way to go, Sandra.
Way to go, Sandra. We love to see it. 2013, she was named in People's Choice Awards Favorite Humanitarian Award. So even more respect and appreciation and admiration for her for those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some awards, some of the very many, are an Academy Award for Best Actress, a Golden Globe Award. She was the highest paid actress in the world, 2010 and 2014. She's making some money.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
2010, she was one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. She kind of
awards. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. She kind of came out. Her first big role, breakthrough role, was Speed of 1994. Yeah. I know what that movie is now, thanks to this week. In 95 to 2000, she did a lot of rom-coms, a lot of thrillers. And then her highest grossing live action film was Gravity in 2013. A few quotes from her that I would be remiss if I didn't share, just because they kind of give a glimpse into Sandra Bullock. She says, falling in love, you should go with it, regardless of whether or not your heart gets smashed. You'll be a better person. Love her energy in this one. Nobody can make me cry in public. I'll punch them first before they make my mascara smear.
I love it. I want to carry that energy with me forever.
Yeah. And then finally, she said, I've learned that success comes in a very prickly package. Whether you choose to accept it or not is up to you. And I think that a lot of that goes into the reason that she has just declared that she will be taking a break from acting. She's feeling burnt out. She said, I don't want to be beholden to anyone's schedule other than my own. I'm so burnt out. I'm so tired. And I'm so not capable of making healthy, smart decisions, and I know it. So after doing 50 films over the last 35 years, Miss Sandra Bullock is taking a break.
Hey, props. I'm sure it's hard, especially when people expect you to put out a certain amount and level of content, after all these years, and for you to be like, hey, listen, I need a break, and you need to respect that.
Yeah,
period.
And we have,
or I'll punch you in the face.
Or she'll punch us in the face. We have literal decades of movies that we can go back and watch. There's no shortage of her influence and her acting career out there, and maybe we can do that today, kind of go over a best, a worst, and our most favorite.
Yeah.
The best was Gravity of 2013. Rotten Tomatoes gave us a 96% for Rotten Tomatoes. We all know that's a pretty high praise. Audience gave it a 79, and that hurt my feelings because, it hurt to watch, but it was a fantastic movie, right? Didn't you think so?
I did, and I'll give a shout out here. I'm about to smear my mom.
Uh-oh.
Here we go, Heidi. I'm coming for you.
No, this is deserved.
Oh, no, I'm coming for you. Well, so first of all, we forgot to mention when the first episode, she told me, I said, Mom, we're starting a podcast. And she's like, that's great. what's a podcast? No, I'm just kidding. She knows what a podcast is. She said, okay, who's it? Like, what are you going to do? And I told her what we were going to do. And she said, who are you going to cover? I said, Brad Pitt. And oh my goodness, she starts fangirling and she says, oh, I know it. I just know what his best movie is. I'm like, what is it, Mom? She says, it's Troy. I just know it. I'm like, why do you think it's Troy? And she said, because his butt. You get to see his butt in that movie. And then she told me later on, she said, you have to mention in your podcast his butt. And we forgot to mention his butt. So here we are, you know, retroactively.
Yes. We didn't.
I think that's the right word.
We didn't fangirl enough the first time, apparently. So here we are.
So we're doing it in honor of my mother.
Yes.
So yes, mentioning the butt, and also mentioning that my mother is one of the reason that score is so low for audience because she bought this on DVD. And that's how we were able to watch it. She said, here, you can have this, you know, to watch for your podcast. And she said, honestly, I didn't like it. I thought it was too slow. And after watching this film, how dare she?
No.
How dare you, Mother?
Did it feel slow? I mean, for me, it was a little too anxiety-inducing. I mean, I felt like I could not breathe the majority of this movie. It's about Sandra Bullock, who plays Dr. Ryan Stone. Love a good unisex name, Ryan. She's a medical engineer. She's been training with NASA, is on her way to her first space mission. Meanwhile, Matt Kowalski is played by George Clooney. Yes. We'll take a moment for that. He's on his last flight before retiring. The opening scene is just visually stunning. There's ethereal serenity. You can see just the filmography is amazing. You have Earth's reflection on their helmets. So you have Sandra Bullock's face, or you have George Clooney's face, and then you have the Earth, you know, like reflecting off of it, and this black, empty, vast expanse behind them. Just stunning scenery. And it's a lighthearted banter. She's repairing the equipment on the Hubble Space Telescope. Kowalski, we immediately find out, is quite the character, George Clooney. He's flying around listening to country music, which is my personal hell. And they're communicating with Houston. He's telling stories. They're like, yeah, we've heard this before, but they kind of let him do his thing. It's just humorous, but then pretty quickly you hear NASA come in with telling them to immediately go back to Earth. You can tell it's not a drill. It's very serious, and the anxiety starts right here for me and doesn't stop until the very end.
Oh, no. And it's crazy because I feel like you're probably not even 10 minutes or maybe about 10 minutes into the movie when
you
shit
stop
hits
breathing.
The fan.
Yes. So Russia had shot down one of their own satellites, but it accidentally caused an offshoot of space debris that takes its own destructive and self-expanding orbit. Houston commands them to return to the shuttle, but they don't make it in time, which is good for these two, Kowalski and Dr. Stone, because the shuttle is completely destroyed and the entire crew is dead. Dr. Stone, after the impact of all this high-speed debris, is left free floating in space. Nightmare, horrible, cannot imagine.
Absolutely. And I think that was like my first big note is I was like, this is literally my worst nightmare. Like I can't imagine one being barely trained for the job. Like I think I don't know if you said
6 weeks or 6 months.
6 months, yeah. But that is like just a tiny bit of training compared to what other astronauts go through. But that, and then at the beginning she mentions already being sick by being up there, you know, just like having no gravity and everything.
She was nauseous and trying to keep her food down already. And this is the end of their trip. They're about to be done and go home, so she's exhausted from her first mission.
And then after that, here she is just being like hurtled into space with like no idea if she's gonna stop. Like
he's saying, like Kowalski's saying, what's your visual? And she's like, I don't know, I can't see, because she's just flipping over and over and over and over. I mean,
yeah, no.
It's a carnival.
No, thank you.
But not the fun kind. So luckily, finally, Kowalski is wearing, there's a name for it. I can't pronounce it. It's a jetpack thingy backpack. He reaches her using that, tethers to her, and kind of bounces her with that back to the Explorer to discover the damage. They realize there's no getting on that to go back to Earth, so they decide, let's go over to the International Space Station. It's a hike, but we can see it. They set their watches for 90 minutes because they expect the debris to orbit back to them around that amount of time. So it gives them a time crunch because things aren't already stressful enough for us, the audience.
I know, right? And to have like an actual time on it and being like,
And they
hey,
just
you
saw,
know what to expect.
Yeah, they just
when
saw
this
how
comes.
bad it was. And it's literally like growing as it orbits, picking up more things and bringing it around with it. I mean, it's a tornado in space. So terrifying for them to know what's coming for them. Meanwhile, she is running out of oxygen in her suit. So she literally cannot breathe. And of course, she's breathing a lot more rapidly because she's terrified and she's trying to save her oxygen. So Kowalski decides to try to get her talking to keep her present in the moment and keep her calm. She opens up about her home life, nothing exciting happening, and finally opens up about the worst part of the movie for myself and Sequoia, losing her small child, died at 4 years old, playing outside, had a head injury, and was just dead. The most terrifying thing, just a normal day, and then your child's not coming home.
I think that's probably every parent's nightmare, especially with your first child. You know, people will tell you, like, you're too cautious, you know, that that it's okay to let them run and play and everything, and then you hear stories like that.
Yeah, it makes you want to bubble wrap them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had literal nightmares about my daughters after listening or watching this movie. Too hard for me to imagine, and they definitely show her just a shell of a human after that. She was driving when she found out, and she said all she does now is just drive. It doesn't matter where, she just drives. So you get to kind of see, even though we only see them in space, we don't see them interacting in daily life, you get to see a lot about her in her daily life through this conversation. They do make it to the ISS and see that it is empty after being evacuated for the same reason, the orbiting debris. And the spacecraft they didn't take to evacuate is too damaged to get them anywhere. They decide to go to the Chinese space station to use their spacecraft to return to Earth. So they tether onto the ISS, but their tether gets snapped. They're entangled. Kowalski, George Clooney, realizes that the cords aren't going to support both of them, and heroically, heartbreakingly detaches himself. He drifts off, and she's pulled back to the ISS, and you can still hear his country music, and they talk a little bit before he fades away, and I cry and yell at Sequoia for making me watch this without a warning.
Just heartbreaking. And yes, of course, I get yelled at. I'll just say this, I did not write, produce, direct,
you
have anything to do with this film,
me.
and I get in trouble for how the plot plays out.
I say, am I going to cry? And you say, oh, there's one part that might be kind of sad. Girl, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I love George Clooney, but I definitely think the 4-year-old dying is a lot more traumatic than him floating peacefully off into space with his country music.
We didn't see it happening. God. Up spaghetti over here. So she goes inside. She tries to get communication going, but there's damage. She can't reach NASA, can't reach anybody in space. And there is an electrical fire. So, of course, there's an electrical fire because it's
why not?
So stressful this whole time. She rushes to the spacecraft, gets in and closes the hatch just in time because the fire is about to go in there. There's this huge relief, and then she flips everything on and realizes there is no freaking fuel. She tries to communicate over the radio in there, can't get a signal aside from there's like a fisherman playing with like his radio back at home.
I know that part is a little like that might be one of my only complaints about the movie. It was a little confusing, which I mean, yeah, it's going to be because there's that language barrier, but this I think his name's Oningong, right?
I didn't even write it down because I knew there's no way I'd say it right, but something like that.
He's somehow on that frequency, like the FM frequency or something.
Girl, I don't know how things work, honestly. I was like, oh, it's a CB thing, like in a truck.
I don't know.
I don't know
perhaps.
either.
But
it was confusing.
It does have a baby with him, so that part's confusing too. And then there's dogs there, so
well, I kind of picture like a family at home, or maybe they're all out on a boat together. But yes, there's a baby crying, and you just see the emotions on her face, like she lost her baby and she knows she's about to die probably, and she's getting to hear a baby cry, and it was just like a bittersweet. And she even says like, I hope I get to see my baby soon. That was an emotional moment. There's a dog barking, and then she starts asking the man like, can you make your dog bark again? And she starts woofing, and then they start howling, and you can just see her kind of slipping to insanity while she's howling. Woo! It was very just the acting in this moment is just so sad, and so like you just kind of feel yourself giving up with her. She shuts down oxygen supply in preparation to just let her body die in peace rather than trying to make it out there again.
Yeah, and being trashed by space debris. Yeah, I'd definitely rather just run out of oxygen.
Yeah, so much more peaceful. And she's listening to him sing a lullaby to his baby. It's just a peaceful, let's just be done. I've not really been living anyway. My daughter's gone. As she begins to lose consciousness, though, who appears outside her window but Kowalski, knocking to come in. She's confused and baffled, so she doesn't do anything, and then he opens the door, and we all, including Dr. Stone, expect her to die. However it is that being exposed to outer space kills you, it crystallizes your skin or sucks your soul out. I'm not really sure of the science.
That sounds right.
Something like that. He sits down next to her, gets onto her for giving in, and tells her to use the landing rockets to propel forward since you don't have to have fuel to use them. She's like, okay, it makes sense. And then he disappears. So we're like, well, crap, it was a hallucination, but yay, we have a plan now.
No, I love this, though, because I feel like throughout the whole movie, like, George Clooney is just the most grounding character to have talking to you while you're having this panic attack in outer space. Yeah. And, of course, you know, in that moment that her brain is so oxygen deprived, that's who she's going to hallucinate, because that was her closest tether that she had, you know, before this.
Answers. I like that you say the word tether there, because that's so apt. But yeah, good stuff, Sequoia. So poetic. But yeah, I mean, he's the voice of reason. He understands how things are working out here, and it's really cool that she had that within herself, but it took hallucinating him in order to get there. It was a big moment where you kind of see her decide that she's actually gonna fight and that her life is worth saving after all of this time where she's been alive but not living. It was a shaking moment for her that we get to see as the audience. She is able to make the thrusters work. She's able to get there to the craft. She's not able to dock onto it, and so she uses a fire extinguisher, Wall-E style, to thrust herself towards it.
I love that. We were all like hooting and hollering. We're like, yeah,
it's
Wall-E!
happening. Yeah. It was pretty cool to see that happen. Not sure how to work in reality, but that's
I believe it.
Such is movie life. Yeah,
I believe so.
And then once again, she gets into the capsule right on time. This time, there's not an electrical fire or debris flying, but it is re-entering the upper atmosphere for Earth. It undocks just in time. It's bursting into flame. Equipment is falling off and burning. The capsule barely makes it through. You can see some of the equipment around her in her capsule on fire. And luckily enough, she lands into a lake. Houston is on the radio saying that they're tracking her location. Dispatch is on its way. You have one final stressful moment where the capsule is filling with water. She can't climb out of it. She keeps getting sucked back in. She's finally back on Earth, but now she's drowning and not able to breathe oxygen because of water instead of space. And then it finally fills with water and she's able to swim through. The last thing that we see in the whole entire movie is her crawling onto the beach, struggling to stand on shaking legs, and walking away. Some notable elements in this movie that kind of stood out to me, for one, is that last part, about the human condition, about resiliency and evolution, you know, crawling out from the beach, struggling to stand, walking away. She begins a whole new life at that point. The acting in this movie, despite limited gestures and movement, the amount of emotions that only two on-screen characters, George Clooney, which is also so rare.
Yes.
We only really see two characters in the movie. We hear voices, but just see those two. We get to see a lot of acting just from their voices and their facial expressions.
All right. So I guess that is my cue to go ahead and talk about the worst rated Sandra Bullock movie, which is Speed 2, Cruise Control, which was fun because that means that we had to watch like a bonus movie. We had to watch the first Speed to kind of get a little bit of understanding on the Speed 2.
Right.
And I'll just say it, I was taken by surprise. I really loved the first movie. Keanu Reeves is a babe as always.
We love some Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, definitely prefer the long hair on him, but he's very good.
He's another actor who's surprising about his age. He seems to be one of those people that does not age.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the worst movie is Speed 2: Cruise Control, which came out in 1997. It received a 4% by critics and 16% by audience. And I think I'll go ahead and say this up top. After watching the first movie and then comparing the second movie, I truly believe that it got that rating because of how good the first movie was.
Yeah.
I think that's the curse of any sequel, is that you're going to have to try really hard to fill the shoes of the first movie.
Yeah, for sure. But also just comparing that with the worst movie for Brad Pitt, Cool World.
Yeah,
that
I cannot
movie was
believe.
absolute trash and deserves so much lower ratings than Speed 2 does. I mean,
I feel like they
not
should
the
like
same
switch
game.
places, because I think the audience reviews for Cool. I'm forever it's gonna be Cruel World instead of Cool World.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I think that for that movie it was like 20-something%, whereas this one is 16%, and that blows my mind because that movie was just trash. Whereas this one, it may not be great, but it's definitely not that bad. It is not Cruel World bad.
It's not for you and I. I think there's some nostalgia for people that grew up watching it. It's a cult classic for some people, and you know, the style, you know, that director had with it is his own style, and some people really appreciate it. Just not maybe for us, and that's okay.
No. Yeah, so this movie stars Sandra Bullock and Jason Patric. Whereas I have not seen it, I was told by my stepfather that Jason Patric is pretty well known for The Lost Boys. So if you've seen that, you know, that's one of his other big ones. But in this film, Sandra Bullock plays Annie Porter, and she is dating a SWAT officer named Alex Shaw, played by Jason Patric. And right off the rip, you know, we talked about Keanu Reeves, and you're probably wondering, okay, you didn't mention his casting. Why is he not in this film? But according to an article on Insider.com, Keanu Reeves explained that ultimately he turned down the role because of the script. While he loved playing Jack in the first film, he explained on the Graham Norton show that he didn't, quote-unquote, respond to the writing, and that, quote, "I'm sure we've all had this kind of feeling when things just don't feel right," end quote. And I honestly feel like he was letting him down easy in his very Keanu way. Like,
it's not you, it's me.
Yeah, being like, oh, I don't love it, but don't worry, it's not you. Like, it is. Yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
just
speak to me on a personal level.
Exactly.
Yeah, love him for it.
Because I think I even looked this up before I started the movie. I was like, what the heck? Why is he not in the second one?
Yeah.
But then after, you know, watching the film, I'm like, okay, I agree with him. And I see why he did this.
Yeah.
So the movie starts off with Sandra Bullock as Annie, and she's doing her driving test. And if you have seen the first film, you know that she is getting her driver's license because she had that traumatic experience on that runaway bus in the first film, and she's like, hell no, I'm never riding on a bus ever again in my life.
No more buses
thank you.
for her. Yeah, cannot blame her.
And while she's in her driving test, she happens to run into her boyfriend, who's in this high-speed chase as a SWAT officer, which I didn't think that was really their thing. You know, I thought they just bust into places and shut things down, not like get on motorcycles and chase bad guys. But what do I know?
Right.
So at this point, she discovers that he has been lying about his job. He has been telling her that he's basically like I don't want to say basically like a mall cop, but that's basically how he describes it to her, except for the beach. Like, he's just there to kind of drink lemonade and help little grannies cross the street.
Yeah.
Like, he's not there to fight any, dangers or anything like that.
Yeah.
But after discovering that he was lying about his job, he decides to take her on a Caribbean cruise by way of apology.
Good boy.
I love / hate it. There's this scene where he's like apologizing for lying to her, and he justifies it by saying that he didn't want to blow the relationship. That's why he lied to her. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's crazy, because he should know that it would be way worse for it to come out later than, for him to just be open about it in the beginning, because she talks about how, she doesn't want to be with someone who was like her ex, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, and take notes now, folks. That's absolutely the way to go, is honesty. Your partner can respect you being honest about something hurtful than you being dishonest any day.
Yeah, and they definitely do that thing in the beginning of the film where they're trying to explain away why Keanu Reeves is not present in this movie, and she's saying, I told Jack, which is Keanu Reeves, that I think the quote is something like, relationships that begin under intense circumstances are like bound to end terribly. And she's like, and that's why we didn't work out, and XYZ and whatever. And so that's why it's such a big deal, with this guy, because she's like, my big problem with Jack is that he was always putting himself in danger, and I hated it. And I started dating you because you assured me that you did not have a dangerous line of work, and you lied. And then, so while aboard the ship, which is named Seaborn Legend, the system is hacked by a passenger named John Geiger, who is played by Willem Dafoe. Love to see Willem Dafoe, and he actually looks surprisingly good with like the long blonde surfer boy hair. I was pleasantly surprised. He was really rocking that.
Yeah, and his versatility. I hope we get to cover him soonish, because he's such a versatile actor, and his ability to play the unhinged, scary characters.
Oh, yeah, he did. And if you listen long enough, we did give him an honorable mention at the end of the episode. And if you didn't hear it, maybe you can go back and listen.
Unless you're related to us, then just don't.
Then don't. If you're my family, I don't really care. Whatever. So my issue with the villain story in this movie is that Geiger's motive is very unclear. He doesn't really act with a clear chain of events. It just seems that he's randomly like looting and setting off different system malfunctions at will on this ship. You can't tell if he's there for like money, revenge, or if he's just there to like stir shit up. Yeah. You don't really know what's going on. You don't really find out until well into the movie that he's actually a former system designer of the cruise ship's autopilot functions, and that he's actually taking revenge on the cruise line because they fired him after he got sick with copper poisoning.
It's not the clearest origin story for a villain, but it could be bad writing. It could also be the fact that that's so like on par for his characters. You don't make any sense, buddy, and you're kind of scary. Like,
that's true.
We don't know what's going on in your head. We know we just don't like it.
And that's the thing too, is that you don't really know what's wrong with him. Like, you do know that he is ill. It shows him like self-treating with leeches, and it shows him taking all these medications and stuff. But I feel like it kind of leaves you expecting. Like, they expect you to connect the dots. Yeah. They don't really, like, spell it out for you or anything.
Yeah.
And after causing numerous malfunctions upon the ship, putting many passengers in danger, Geiger begins aiming the ship straight for an oil tanker. At this point, Alex and Annie are trying to do all they can to stop Geiger and divert the ship. Before it can crash, Geiger takes Annie hostage on twin jet skis and makes for his escape. The ship is then, air quotes, successfully diverted from the oil tanker, only for it to be aimed right into the sea town of St. Martin. Just when you think the destruction can't get any worse, it's like they say, how can we like Michael Bay this a little bit more? How can we make this a little more crazy? And once it crashes onto land and stops, Alex hijacks a boat in order to rescue Annie from Geiger. And I really like just that whole scene, like as the boat is crashing into land, they're acting like this is successful for them. They're like, oh my God, we're finally getting the ship to stop. Yay. And I'm like, bro, you just like ran into like 10 different boats with, multiple people on them. Like, it shows some of the ships exploding and stuff, and there's no remorse shown. You're just like, yay, we made it. Let's all get off the boat now. What a fun cruise, Yeah. And so then we see ski? I know, right? Let's go party now. All the waters are clear. There's no crowds.
Yeah.
So he hijacks the boat in order to rescue Annie. And this is where we see a fun tidbit from the first film. The man that Alex commandeers the speedboat from is actually the same guy that Keanu Reeves, who plays Jack in the first movie, commandeers his car from in the original Speed. We never know this guy's name. However, we do know his license plate in the first movie was Toon Man, and his boat bore the same name on the side of it in the second film. And honestly, Toon Man is probably the best part of this film,
Yes.
besides Defoe's luscious locks, I think.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Geiger is beginning to board a seaplane with Annie in tow. When Alex catches up, he spears the plane and pulls himself up to it just in time before it takes off into the air. He has a struggle with Geiger after a brief and unnecessary reunion with Annie. Like, I feel like, you know, you can kiss and make up later. Like, you need to get rid of this bad guy first. But he decides to, like, reunite with her first and be like, oh, I'm so glad you're okay. And Geiger's just, like, pretending like, oh, I can't see you until you're ready to accost me. Then all of a sudden, there you are.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah. And so, he rescues Annie and escapes with her in tow on one of, I don't know what it's called, but the little floaty things attached to the bottom of the seaplanes, you know, that help it rest on the water.
Yeah, those things. Yeah.
They just, like, hop on top of it and it conveniently drops from the plane. It's great. Geiger, distracted, then crashes his plane into the oil tanker and explodes along with the whole ship. And thank God the passengers evacuated beforehand, because can you imagine, like, the casualties like that, plus the casualties that the cruise ship, you know, had upon the people on their sailboats? Like, that would have been terrible.
Right.
Annie and Alex then begin to travel back to the destroyed town, and Alex proposes to Annie while on the boat, and she says yes, which I think is hilarious, because ever since that first movie, like I said, she says that, quote, relationships that start under intense circumstances, they never last, end quote. And in the beginning of this film, you know, like I said, she explains that that's why her and Jack broke up. And then in this movie, her and this Alex guy, she says it in the beginning, they've only been together 7 months, which I feel like if you're like Mormon, like I used to be, that might be acceptable, but they're not. Like, they're just everyday Joe Schmo. And she's like, you know what? I know we haven't been dating. And there's a point in the movie too where Alex says to her, like, you know, as a way of apology, like after he's like, oh, well, we can use this chance on the cruise to like get to know each other more. I'm like, what have you been doing for the last 7 months? Just like staring into each other's eyes with no conversation at all? Like, what has been happening? And then he's like, actually, you know what? Let's get married. And she says yes, even though it contradicts everything she said up until this point.
And he's been trying to propose to her, you know, the whole cruise. And she keeps, like, she doesn't know that's what he's doing, but she keeps being like, it would be so crazy if we got married. We barely know each other, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not at peace with your job. And then after, like, the most dramatic, like, interlude possible. Thing, and then she's like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Who cares? And also too, like, I just feel like they have absolutely no chemistry. I'll just say that, like, she's a phenomenal actress, but this, I don't know if it's this guy, this actor, or if it's just they just don't really have any on-screen chemistry. I don't know what it is. I just didn't feel that spark between them like I did with her and Keanu Reeves. But I'll end with adding just a couple comments on it. I feel like the only redeeming quality of this movie is Sandra Bullock, who apparently is just like always good at her job, no matter how bad the script is. And Toon Man, of course.
Toon Man.
Toon Man was so good. I love Toon Man. I'm gonna change my Twitter name to Toon Man.
There you go.
One problem that I have with Alex is that while, yes, he is on the SWAT team, throughout the whole movie, he continues to act as if he's an expert on all issues that arise. Like bombs, he acts like he knows everything about cruise ship systems, like he's using all this lingo and stuff. I'm like, dude,
so
who are you? Like, he's like, oh, I know about all the machinery up in here, and, you know, he acts like he has all these detective skills and stuff, and and I love that he like runs around asserting his authority by saying, oh, I'm LAPD, and it's like, bro, this is international waters.
Yeah.
You're in the Caribbean. You can't
Yeah.
just like act like you can do whatever you want because you're LAPD. That I don't think that's really how it works. But
How American of him.
oh yeah. But yeah, and there's also a lot of disorienting scenes. I feel like some dialogue and sequences of events that just make no sense, and they try to like gloss on, like over it and quickly move on in hopes that you just didn't notice or something.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see why Keanu Reeves chose not to be in the film because of the script, because I feel like so much of it just makes like zero sense.
Yeah.
And I do feel like it's important to note too that while the film did still have the same director, the screenplay and story were written by someone else.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like this contributed to the like degradation of quality between the first and second films.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't give the first movie a rating, but I put in my notes here that I would like to give this movie 2 out of 5 DDs, which stands for Defoe Dicks.
Oh, stop.
All right, and that was Speed 2.
Sequoia's blushing over there.
Oh, I'm sweating just thinking about it. Too spicy for me.
Spicy.
Danny is on the floor.
Yeah.
Literally, he could not handle this.
Danny is dead. Well, before I move into my next one on that note, I do need to give it a rating. I'll go ahead and give Gravity, I'll give it a 9 out of 10 fire extinguishers.
There you go.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 Wallies, if you will.
Yeah. The Wally Awards. Okay, well, we are moving finally into just a brief moment talking about my favorite while you were sleeping. Luckily for us, this is a favorite for both of us. We both enjoyed it. The ratings from Rotten Tomatoes, 81%. That's fair. We'll take it. It's a comedy romance. It's cute. It's charming, but it's not a groundbreaking, earth-shaking kind of movie.
I like how you called it a comedy romance. I've never heard
a rom-com.
Yeah, rom-com.
As the young kids say these days.
As the young kids. No, I think that's pretty standard. You said
Shut
that,
up.
and I was like I had to blink for a second. I was
You
like,
forget
huh?
our age difference. I'm an old lady over here. Audience score 79, so just a 2.2% difference, closer than I've seen in any of these other movies.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like the audience score would be higher on this than the Rotten Tomatoes, just because I know for a lot of us it's nostalgic, and it's my favorite Christmas movie because it happens around Christmas time, and just a classic from my childhood, so I just probably feel pretty biased towards it. So this is about Sandra Bullock plays Lucy Eleanor. She has, say it?
Moderates. I love her last name.
You know how to say her last name, Moderates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Moderates.
I was going to gloss right on over that because I don't know how to say it.
Yeah,
Moderates. Lucy
because
Eleanor Moderates.
I think it's because I like the way Jack says it.
I like the way Jack says everything.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a crush on Jack. Well, Lucy Moderates has a longtime crush on Peter. He rides the train that she works the booth for regularly. He's a businessman that she sees, and it's just one of those things where she sees him and she stumbles and forgets how to English or how to human, and you feel secondhand embarrassment for her. And I think we've all been in that moment where I am just like charmed by this person to a point where I'm stupid.
Yeah, just everything. You forget how to do anything.
Not know this man, has never had a conversation with him outside of their transactions there, but she just is smitten by him.
I love in the beginning too, like when it's close to Christmas and stuff, and he sees her, and at first she's like looking down at the counter, she's not even paying attention, and he drops his token in, and she looks up, and he gives her this charming smile, and he says, "Merry Christmas," and he goes to walk away.
Yeah.
And what does she say? I think she
Merry
said,
Christmas.
No, I think she just says like thank you or something. Like she barely says anything at all.
Yeah.
And then he walks away, and she's like, "Oh, really?" She's like, "Nice coat. Merry Christmas."
Yeah.
Just
all the
anything.
things she wished
like
that she had said, "I love you." Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Just that immediate regret the second he walks away. Of like, I could have said anything at all, anything except what I said.
Yeah. Yeah. felt, relatable content. So she's, pretty lonely. She lives in an apartment with her cat. She has the apartment manager, slimy, creepy, always asking her on dates. It's cute that he thinks he has a chance with her and she shuts him down every time. Not a whole lot going on aside from work, which is also just not a super stimulating job, especially for her character in this movie is very witty, intelligent. You can just kind of see her not living up to her potential and not really enjoying herself. She's at work one day. It happens to be Christmas Day, that same day that we were talking about, where he tells her Merry Christmas, and she watches him walk away lamenting the fact that she didn't engage in conversation. And a group of muggers push him onto the tracks. He passes out. And so bravely, she jumps out of her booth and runs onto the tracks, tries to wake him up. He's out cold. And so she rolls him off of the tracks and save him from a train coming. Rides with him to the hospital, and the doctors take him back. And a nurse hears her saying, "Oh, I was going to marry him," which, and I know I would so say that about someone I had a crush on that I'd never talked to. I was going to marry him.
And I love that. I think we talked about this too. It's almost like this nurse had been watching too much Grey's Anatomy or something.
Yeah.
Like she hears that and she's like, I have to insert myself into the situation now.
I am Meredith Grey.
Yes.
So she hears that and she's like, oh, I have to unite them. This is his fiance. And so ensues the complicated plot of this movie. Lucy is so caught up in panic, she doesn't really even get to explain herself. And she finds herself in a hospital room with her crush, Peter, who is in a coma, just completely not awake even a little bit, and his lovely family that is so lovely, and I want them to be my family, but wow, are they a lot.
Yeah off the bat. But it's one of those things too that it's like Hysteria. They are what you expect family to be, just kind of overbearing in some ways and stuff, but they do have that warmth to them, that immediately when you meet them, you're thinking like, I want to be a part of this.
And especially for this she has no family, she's alone, and then all of a sudden, there's this beautiful family that she's like, I wanted to marry him. I wanted you guys to be my family, but now I'm an imposter, you know?
And I love that she continues to find herself in these situations because people are speaking for her.
Yeah. Because they are so boisterous.
Is she never really tells she doesn't say, oh, I'm his fiance. Let me in there.
Yeah.
Someone overhears her talking to herself and puts her in the room.
Yeah.
And then when they ask her, they say oh, who's this? And then it's the doctor or nurse or something that says, oh, this is the fiance. So, and she's just the type of person that's so timid and quiet that she's not gonna push back. She's just rolling with it. She's okay.
Yeah, I mean, she keeps this all a secret because, one, she's embarrassed. It's embarrassing. Oh, actually, he has no idea who I am. I've just had a crush on him as a stranger for forever. Also, his grandmother has this heart condition, and she's terrified that by telling all of them that it's all been a lie, she's going to have a whole entire heart attack and her death is going to be on her. And then, we see her quickly become a part of his family. They've embraced her. She loves them. They love her. And she wants to be included, and it's hard for her to cut ties at that point because she feels already attached. One night she's in the hospital staying with Peter, still in his coma, and talking to him while he's asleep, telling him how sad it is that she's so lonely that she's talking to a man that doesn't know her, who's in a coma. And she confesses her predicament to him. And Saul, which is Peter's godfather that we all just love to death, he overhears this, doesn't make it known to her that he overheard it, but confronts her later and tells her, I'm going to keep it a secret because this accident and everything that came from it has brought all of us closer together. So he's looking out for the family's best interest, and he can see that she is a genuine person. Like he said, she never told a lie. So again, no family, no friends, except for her boss at work. She's completely unnoticed by everybody in her life. Now she's being embraced so warmly. She becomes just captivated with this family and their unconditional love and their craziness and their warmth is just it's something she's never seen before. And she gets to actually spend Christmas with them. And finally, she meets Peter's younger brother, Jack. This is played by Bill Pullman. He's supposed to take over the father's furniture business, and he's very suspicious. He's like, something is sus here with this woman. Like, wasn't Peter engaged to somebody else? Why have none of us heard of you? Who are you really? You're not his type. You're brown hair and, you know, not all made up the way that Peter's usual girls are.
Yeah. And I don't even think he knows at first that Peter is engaged to that other girl, or supposedly engaged.
Yeah.
I think he's just like the type of relationship he has with his brother. He looks at him and he's like, how could he have a girl like Lucy?
Yeah.
And like you said, that it's not his type at all. You know, she's a lot more, I hate to say plain, because you know, she's wonderful in this movie,
and he doesn't see her as plain. We find out later is captivated by her, but she's just not like his type. She's a little more maybe cerebral, a little more down to earth, a little more substantial maybe than his usual type that he goes toward. So yeah, he's just suspicious. He's like, something doesn't add up. But as he spends more time with her in an effort to kind of figure out the situation, they actually develop a close friendship, and you see them both fighting the realization that they have fallen in love with each other. Finally, New Year's Eve comes around. Peter actually wakes up. He doesn't know Lucy when he sees her, so everyone's like, oh my gosh, she has amnesia. There's panic all around, hysterics.
You think the grandma's about to fall out, have a heart attack.
Yeah, she's like sitting down, clutching her chest, spazzing out everywhere. They're having to like tell him like, yeah, you like this food, or no, you don't like that, or do you remember this one time? He's like, yeah, I remember that. And Saul, knowing everything that he knows, tells Peter he needs to propose to her again, and if she accepts, she does accept, and she realizes she's in love with Jack, but feels, I guess, committed at this point to this man that doesn't even know who she is. Jack comes to see her the day before the wedding, and she kind of opens the door for him to change his mind, and said, like, is there a reason that I shouldn't marry Peter? And then he says, I can't. He can't betray his brother like that. And so they're both just, like, heavy, you know, knowing what's coming up and knowing that there's not really a peaceful way out of it.
And I feel like they never even had that closure of, like, they never got to say, oh, I have feelings for you. Oh, I have feelings for you too. You know, it was just kind of like they saw the look in each other's eyes, but the words never even got to, you know, be spoken. But now here she is being married off to his brother. Yeah,
I mean, so painful for him. And then, you know, of course, the next day they're at the actual ceremony, and he's, you know, standing there next to his brother, and everything's just plain underwhelming.
And you can tell how distressed Jack is. He's like pacing, and
he's showing more emotion than anybody else in the room is, because he's so agitated. Peter's like, oh yeah, yay, I'm getting married, you know, kind of just whatever. And then you've got Lucy, just, you can just see on her face that she doesn't want to do this.
She's out of her head too. Like she shows up late, and then she comes in and she still has her overcoat on, and she starts to walk down the aisle, and then she's like,
stop the music.
People tell her, they're like, no, your coat. And she's like, oh shit. She goes back out in the hall and like throws it off, and then she, you know, starts walking
like,
again.
Let's just get it over with. It's not the way you want to see a bride to look as she's walking down the aisle towards her future spouse. So at the wedding, she finally makes her way down the aisle, and she stops, and she finally, at this point, decides it's time to confess everything, and tells the family, I'm in love with your son. And they're like, yeah, honey, we know. Yeah, that's
you're
the whole
marrying
point.
him right now.
And she's like, no, not that son, that son. And they're like, excuse me.
And I love it plays that like 90s like little funky like, oh, this is a predicament kind of music, you know. And Jack's like already getting that smirk on his face that only Jack can do.
Oh yeah. That was, I know you don't love Spaceballs, but that was a Lone Star look that he had. I love it.
Here we go.
We won't get into that at this point. So he's excited, but the family's like, can you explain this, Jack? Like, what's going on? And then while all of this hysteria is going on, Peter's actual fiance walks in and demands the wedding be stopped, and everyone's like, well, yeah, it should be stopped. And there's just chaos everywhere, and the typical way of 90s movie rom-coms.
Thank you.
I did it. Lucy just kind of slips out, not sure what to do with what just happened in there. is just thinking that she'll probably never see this beautiful family that adopted her again.
And I think she's so afraid to even face Jack too. It's yes, she put her feelings out there and everything.
Yeah.
But she couldn't even wait for that resolution, because what if he did turn her down?
Yeah.
And that not only did she lose this wonderful family and everything, but it was not out of just like miscommunication. It was out of straight out refusal, which I think hurts worse.
It got messy real quick for her.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So there's some amount of time passes, and Lucy is back at her toll booth at work, and she's just going through the motions. She's obviously got all this on her mind. And you see an engagement ring instead of a token in the tray. Butterflies, excitement, hand holding all around the audience.
And you get that uplifting music.
Yeah.
And
And then she looks up and he's there. Jack is there.
Woo! I went to make a gesture and I just slapped my microphone.
You good over there?
I just love that the whole family's with him, is what I was gonna say.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you see like their little sister there. Like everyone's like anticipating, like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? Is this really happening? Is she really gonna marry him? And she decides to open the door for him to come into the booth, and the family's watching as he proposes to her. And then we conclude the movie with them kissing at the end of their wedding and heading out on a train for their honeymoon. And she says that he fulfilled her dream of going to Florence, Italy, and explains that when Peter asked when she fell in love with Jack, she said, "It was while you were sleeping." Cut scene.
Woo!
Yes, we give this movie, the nostalgia for me, 10 out of 10 cats.
Oh yeah, 10
Yeah.
out of 10.
10 out of 10 cats. As Danny holds up one of the mini kittens.
Yeah.
So that is it for our favorite movie, While You Were Sleeping.
And there we go. That is Miss Sandra Bullock, the best, the worst, and our favorite. Finally, we got to do a favorite. Yeah, we totally bungled the first one, but we made it around for the second one.
Yeah.
But hey, at least the favorite this time was a lot more uplifting than the favorite the first time. I'll say that.
My heart.
So yeah, there we go. Thank you everyone for listening to our second episode. Like we said up top, we really appreciate all the listens that we've received so far, and we hope that we've provided even better for the second episode, and we hope that you listen in next week for our next episode, which is going to be on Jamie Lee Curtis. Yay!
It's gonna be a really fun one.
Oh yeah, I think we're gonna have a good time with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, and we just want to close out by giving out our socials again. You can find us on our Facebook page at Good Movie Hunting or at GMH Podcast, Twitter at GMH Pod, Instagram at GMH Podcast. Our email is goodmoviehuntingpod@gmail.com, and our YouTube is Good Movie Hunting Podcast. And again, thank you for all of your suggestions so far. And if you do have any more suggestions for our future episodes, please don't hesitate to send us a message or an email.
Yeah, talk to us.
And we will, I was going to say we'll see you next week, but you will hear us next week. This is Sequoia and
Cara
signing off.
Thank you.
Pictures up, quiet, please.
Parker? What's on your mind?
I thought about this all night. Whether what I'm about to do is the right thing or not.
Let me go in and talk to him alone, Dr. Mallory.
I did so only because he was working along lines contrary to the good of mankind.
Well, Rangers, looks as though Agents Mackenzie and Hopkins are going to have to get to that hacienda and get there mighty fast.
To crush all opposition, make me the most powerful man in the world.